Hi, thank you so much for joining me for today's process video. And today's video is for One Sketch 3 Ways, which is a series I participate in with my lovely friends Jackie and Helen. Their details will be in the description box down below. And each month we take a sketch and scrap it and then share our 3 creations, which is where One Sketch 3 Ways comes from. So today I'm scrapping 3 photos of myself and my family at Crosby Beach. I decided that I wanted to use Vicki Boutin's Discover and Create purely for the title. You can see the sketch in the top left hand corner there. It was created by Jackie this month and I've rotated it through 90 degrees so that I can use my landscape photos on it. So the photos have been printed off 3 by 4, so 2 photos to one 4x6 photo sheet, and I'm just matting the 3 of them onto some scrap white cardstock just so that I've got that lovely crisp white border around the edges of the photo. So at the beginning there you will have seen me using my mini brayer to add some basically to add some watercolour. I used Tim Holtz Distress Oxide ink and watered it down and then used the brayer to get it onto the background. It gives a similar look to the packaging technique, but it's a little bit more controlled, which is why I enjoy using it much more than the packaging technique, which I can get in a little bit of a mess with sometimes. So I've used the blue, which is Salty Ocean, and I've just left that to one side to dry because I want to add some yellow on. I've got that scattered straw pulled out to the left. Of course, while I was adding these photos to the card, my ATG ran out, so I've just had to quickly change that tape before I carry on. So I'm just, now they're added to the paper. Sorry, I thought I was still adding it to the card and then I realised I pulled out some pattern paper. I'm just going to trim that off to make a clear block. The photos have been offset ever so slightly against each other on a slightly wonky angle, but I've cut the strip of paper into one plain block. And it's just a lovely white with a geometric pattern on the background. And then I'm not wasting any of the offcuts, so this is one of the offcuts, and I'm just going to use that as the first layer behind the photos. You'll barely see these papers once everything's together, but it all adds to the layers and textures and interest on the page. So each layer I am using my edge distresser just to get those edges distressed, again to add a little bit of interest. And here's the second paper that I'm pulling in, and I'm just going to trim off those wonky edges. I think I'd fussy cut some flowers or something from the other side of that. So that's why, oh, it's feathers it was, yeah. So I'm just popping that down behind the first strip. And when I've done this, I'm not totally happy with the overhang that I've got top and bottom, but I wanted to have that to create the interest, so you'll see how I deal with that in due course. So once again, just distressing those edges and getting this stuck down. So while I'm doing that, don't forget to check the description box down below. We've got links to our Facebook page where you can share your creations and play along. And I've also got links to Jackie and Helen, as I mentioned, so do go and check out their channels to see what they've done with Jackie's sketch this month. So here I am with the background. It was almost dry, so I'm adding the scattered straw. It's not really showing up as much as I wanted it to though, so I'm going to just dab that up. Some of it still shows a little bit, and then I'm going to come in with my ink blending brush and just blend that around the edges like a halo, and it just brings that yellow onto the page. Once the block of photos is down, even though this looks like a huge block of pattern, most of it gets covered up, so I'm not too bothered about blending the ink in the middle. You can see there most of it's covered now. So I wanted to add a film strip or a piece of a film strip down the left hand side of the photos. The only ones that I seem to have left in my drawer that I could see when I had a quick look were these aubergine coloured ones, but I'm going to make them work. It's such a neutral tone really, this, that it will work with any colours. So you can see I've just cut the edge off and I'm just sticking that down the left hand side of my block, and then here's that title that I mentioned, and it says Our Crew, and I just thought that was perfect for photos of my family, so I wanted to use that as my title on this layout. So you can see from the sketch that I popped up in the top left hand corner there, I have gone a little bit off, but the sketch was my starting point, and that's often what we do with sketches. They just give us an idea of what to do and which photos to scrap. So I do love this sketch, and no doubt I'll be using it again as is, but I just wanted to turn mine round today. So here's where I'm dealing with that overhang that I had on that paper. So I'm just going to stick the block down, and I've pulled out one of the branding strips from the Vicki Boutin Discover and Create, and I'm just going to add a small section to the bottom of the strip of photos and then another small section to the top, and that just sort of bridges that gap between the main photo mat and that extra long piece that I'd added. So at the bottom I've overlapped it on top of the long paper, and then at the top, yes, actually at the top it's also on top of that long paper. And you can see how that just fills in those gaps and makes it a little bit more cohesive. So now the title, I had a couple of goes at positioning this. The word hour, I wanted to make sure that that film strip piece was underneath the R. And then this crew, I felt that needed to do the same, but actually it was too far away from the first word, so I do move it up a bit and it works just fine. So there's the title down, there's a little arrow on the acetate, so I decided to add that as well. And then I decided I wanted to add some stamping. I was a bit annoyed with myself because I had wanted to do this before sticking the photos down, but of course, per usual, got a bit carried away and forgot. So I'm just adding this stamping retrospectively. So I brought out the directional stamp set from Hey Little Magpie because there's some little bubbly bits on there, and the hickory smoke die, which is a perfect grey, and I'm just adding those bubbles all the way up the right hand side of the page. So these pictures are of a trip to Crosby Beach, which is near us here, and so I've chosen blue and yellow to match the blue of the sky and sea and the yellow of the sand, and then these bubbles to represent the bubbles as the waves crash onto the shore. So there are reasons for the things that I've chosen on this layout. They normally are. Just carrying on stamping. I'm doing second generation stamping as well, just to create interest, and you can see I'm just having to pull the photo block up a little bit to get these tucked underneath as well. So now that's down, I wanted to add some stenciling, so I pulled out this mesh stencil from Tim Holtz for Stampers Anonymous, and I'm just blending a little bit of chipped sapphire through that, again just to create a little bit of a different texture on the page, adding it to the left and right, and just keeping it tight in against those photos, and then creating another little block at the bottom right of the page so that I can just create some interest down there. So next I'm coming in with another stamp. This is an All and Create stamp. I love this. It's got lots of little hearts and text on it. So using chipped sapphire this time and just adding some stamping again all the way around, keeping it close to the edges of the photo block and towards the bottom of the layout as well. When I'm doing a column like this, a vertical column, I tend to cluster most things around the bottom of the column. I'm not sure why. It just seems to work for me, almost like the roots of a tree, I suppose. It's just sort of anchoring everything down onto the page. So nearly there with this stamping, and I'm not using the stamp with a block because I just want to get that texture on there without any harsh edges. So now going through the sticker book and papery pieces, and I spotted this sheet that had this lovely circular element on, and that's the beginning, that's the base of the cluster that I'm having here. And in fact I use all those elements on that sheet. I've got that lovely black, it looks like a grass, and it just reminded me of the sea grasses that you see as you're walking onto Crosby Beach, so I thought that worked nicely. And then this floral cluster, which I thought worked really nicely with the colours, and then that journaling block, the oval piece, I'm just going to tuck underneath those florals, and I'm going to add some stickers onto that, like Jackie's sketch where she's got the little strips coming in. So these stickers say life in colour, and I think that works really nicely there. Just making sure that I'm happy with the positioning. And then this lovely yellow butterfly just adds a bit of colour to the left of the title. So now I want to do something on the right hand side, just seeing what else is on that sticker sheet. There was a lovely little gold heart. Ah yes, and this tag. I did think about tucking it so that you could see the left hand side, but in fact where I wanted it at the top you couldn't see the left hand side, so I just trimmed the left hand side off and just use that top piece and tuck it underneath, and then I will find a way of using that left hand side on the right hand side of my layout. You'll see what I mean shortly. So first of all, tucking this piece just under. I think about putting it at the top, but it goes much better at the bottom, in line with what I was saying about building up the base of the strip of photos. So just tucking that under there. I did trim off the top so that it looks like one continuous scallop and doesn't have the return piece coming in towards the left. And then just popping that tag head at the top. So I'm cutting another strip of those scallops, and I'm going to use that on the right hand side of the page. I'm not sure whether to use it vertically or horizontally, but in the end I do go horizontally because the other pieces are vertical. It just creates more interest if you add it in a different direction to all the other pieces. So I'm just going to trim that down. It was a bit too long where I had it, and then I'm going to find some other pieces to layer up onto that. So that's my base, and then I find another branch which is going to mimic the leafy piece that I've got going up the photos. So I'm going to add that there, and then I find another little yellow, I think it's a moth actually, so I'm going to add that above, and that more or less completes that cluster. I will add a couple more pieces there in due course, but I'm really happy with how that's looking. So now I've pulled out my Everyday Tab stamp from Ellie Studio. The word phrases on here are absolutely amazing. So I'm going to use my black soot ink and just stamp 5 or 6 different phrases all the way around the page. So I've got family, simple and perfect, happiness, together, and then the little string of hearts, and also there's a little string of dots which I'm going to add, and I'm adding them all round, so to the left and right of the photo strip and underneath as well, because that's been a little bit neglected, the space underneath the photo. So I'm just making sure to build everything up. And normally I would do this with my permanent ink, but because I knew that I wasn't going to be adding too much mixed media, I'd done it all at the beginning, I was fine using my black soot, and it's a little bit more subtle than the permanent ink. It's not quite as black, so it works nicely for me on this layout, and it just creates brilliant texture. So here are those hearts that I mentioned. I think this is the heart one, is it? Or is this, oh no, it's still the words, sorry. It's hard to see. I'm on a little phone screen when I'm editing, so I can't always see very clearly what's going on. So this is the 4th word phrase, I think, which says simple and perfect. And there are so many different phrases on that stamp set. I would highly recommend having a look. Ellie has quite a few of these tabs sets, and they all have fabulous word phrases on, so well worth looking at. So I think this now is the hearts, and I just dot this in a couple of places about the page. And doing all this layering does take a bit of time, but the overall effect at the end is brilliant. Adding this black makes such a difference to the layout. And finally, here are those dots that I was talking about. So they're not parallel, they do go up and down a little bit, but they really do add a lot of interest. So we've got stamping, we've got those circular stamps, all the inks, the ink blending, so lots of different layers going on this layout, and it builds up to create a really nice background. So I'm just bringing in a scrap of card there because I wanted to not use the full strip of stamp, so I was just shielding where the stamp would sit on the photos. And just adding some that goes off the page as well. And I think we're just about done now with the stamping. So I wanted to add some twine to that top tag. So just some navy blue, and I'm just going to leave it to curl down the right hand side of the page. I'll add a couple of dots of glue just to hold it in place. And now some tangled twine. Just wanted to add some at the bottom. This works really nicely on a beach layout because there are always bits of string and fishermen's nets and things on the beach, so I just thought that would work nicely tucked into the bottom there. I'm just adding a big dollop of glue just to hold it in place. And then I wanted to add a little ribbon loop, so just using my lovely black gingham ribbon. I'm really enjoying using this on layouts at the moment. I'm just tucking that in at the bottom. And then I'm adding the fact that we're at Crosby Beach, Liverpool. I have got a few layouts using these photos already, but or the photos from that day, but it doesn't hurt just to add where we were and the date. So just going through this puffy sticker sheet to see if there are any little scattering bits that I can add, and I found a couple of hearts and stars, and that one at the top says hey there, which works nicely with the photos. There's also one at the bottom there that says joyous, and I really like that, so I'm going to add that there. And then this lovely navy camera from one of our printable sheets, A Little Magpie. And I also have this starfish, which I'm going to add to the bottom there. It's just from the Bits and Pieces collection from Hey Little Magpie. It's white, so it's very subtle, but it looks really nice in that cluster. And then to finish off, some splatters using my scattered straw ink, just watered down, and then using a small paintbrush just to add those splatters all the way around the edges of the photos. And that's the layout done. I hope I've provided some inspiration. I hope you'll join us on the Facebook page. Thank you so much for joining me. See you soon. Bye.